Hello, welcome to another video from the Conscientious Biologist, Ben Gallagher. This is a really important one. It's the first one in the section on proteins, and I think it's probably the most important lesson in the entire GCSE course. I've said this before in the cell biology videos, but proteins do everything. And if you can get a really good understanding of proteins, what they are, how they form, how they function, then you can really look at most of the biology course and get a really good understanding of it. So this one is so important. It's for GCSE level, but if you're struggling at all at A level, this would be a great way to refresh your knowledge and give you a better foundation to understand the more complex look at the process that you do at A level. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, but let's get started. So let's just recap what proteins are. We covered this briefly in some of the cell biology lectures. You may remember I showed you these three pictures. Now these are factories that have automated machines doing all the work for them. So this one in the middle is really good. This is from a car factory. You've got all those yellow robots there, basically building the cars without any real human input. Now obviously you needed humans to build the machines in the first place, and those humans who built the machines must have been working off blueprints or designs that engineers put together, and then a mechanic and engineer could come along, read the designs, put those yellow machines together, put those yellow machines there in the right place. But once they're there, those machines do everything. They're what's building the cars and keeping that factory productive. So remember that about those machines, because proteins are like tiny biological machines. They come in many forms with many different functions. They largely fit under two categories though. They can either be structural or they can be functional. Structural meaning they could form parts of a wall or parts of a block or a container or something. Functional meaning they've actually got a chemical metabolic process. They do, among other things, all the essential tasks that keep metabolism going. And you may remember that metabolism is all of the building things and all of the breaking things that go on in cells. So therefore, if a cell can make its proteins, the proteins will do everything for the cell. And that's such an important phrase. I'm going to flash it up a lot over the next few presentations. Proteins do everything. So let's quickly link that back into our cell biology. And if we're looking at cells and we look at what they need to do, then we can simplify it to that cells are just small compartments that can make very specific proteins which do everything the cells need. That's all cells are. They're little bags that have proteins that do stuff inside that bag for the cell to keep functioning. So you've basically got four key things that all cells have to have if they're going to make proteins and be metabolically active, in other words, be alive. They've got to have these two things. They've got to have the cell membrane, which is the skin of the cell, and it controls some of the things that come in and out. And they've got to be full of cytoplasm. That's that sort of slightly jelly-like liquid inside them that allows everything to move around and interact. To make proteins and be functional and metabolic, they need two other things. The first of which are these. These are chromosomes which are made of DNA, and DNA is the code for making proteins. Okay, I use chromosomes of DNA there. That's the equivalent of me saying a book of words. Okay, the book. If I held up a book, you'd go, yeah, that's a book. If I opened it up and said, well, what are all those? You'd go, oh, those are words. Okay, the book contains the words, the chromosome contains the DNA, the written instructions. But you've got to have something that can read those instructions. That's these things. You should remember those are the ribosomes. Those are the builders. These can follow the genetic information to make the proteins. And if you've got those things, then they can make the proteins, and the proteins will do everything. Just for completeness, so you're not getting confused, those are the four things that are absolutely essential. But let's just throw a nucleus over there, because largely we're talking about eukaryotic cells in this. Prokaryotic cells do still use proteins, still do protein synthesis in the same sort of way. But remember, their chromosomes are circular, not linear like the ones I've shown here. So I'll just throw a nucleus around it for completeness. So we know proteins are essential for the cell's functioning and for metabolism. But let's think about what they're made from. So let's talk about the building blocks. Now we're going to do this as a slight analogy. So if I put up these building blocks, type of building blocks all of you will have had as kids. My kids have got them. We play for hours and hours with them. And you can build pretty much anything out of these building blocks, and people have. I put up a few examples. We've got a lamp that somebody builds. It's a functional lamp stand. Its shape, its base, the top can hold the lampshade. You know, it's exactly the right shape for being a functional lampshade. Someone else built this. They built a champagne bottle. It's not actually got champagne in it, but it does work as a bottle. It's hollow. They've waterproofed it. They've crushed the bricks really close together so there's no gaps, and it functions as a bottle. You don't just have to make houses and things like that out of these building blocks. Let's look at a few more elaborate things. Someone made this. Someone actually built an entire car out of Lego, even put an engine in it, and it drives. But all of the outside is built out of Lego. The wheels aren't. The wheels are normal wheels. Okay, but that's a really elaborate thing. But these three things I've got up here at the moment, the actual parts of the building blocks don't do a lot. They're just kind of containers or shapes or things like that. But what's brilliant with these, you can build little machines like this one that I've got there. Now you might look at that machine there and go, well, hang on a minute, that machine's got very different building blocks to the simple ones that I've shown over there. And yes, you're quite right. There's not just one type. It's not just those 6x2 building blocks I put by the title. There's lots of different types of building blocks. And because there's lots of different types, you can make way more types of things, way more complex little machines like this one. But you can go really complex. These I only saw the other day. They flashed up when I was looking at something online. This vehicle here is a fully working, functional and automatic machine that drives itself around on golf carts, drives itself around on golf courses, scooping up the golf balls with that bit at the front, scooping them up, dropping them down that arm at the back, dropping them into a container. Brilliant. What a clever little machine. But it's just made out of the same building blocks and not that many different types. Here's another shot of a machine, some of the internal mechanisms. This one that was built, engineered properly. It was part of a competition to sort potatoes out by size. Now look at the intricacies there. But it's still just made of the same sort of building blocks as any of the things on this page. Now that's the same as proteins. All proteins are built of the same building blocks. But instead of things like this, the building blocks for proteins are amino acids. It's over there. So important to remember that. Amino acids are like the bricks that you can use to build any of the other things that I've got on this screen. But just like we said for the more complex machines, you need more than one just type of brick. Well, yeah, there's 20 different amino acids. Now, when you've got 20 different versions of the building blocks, and you can combine them in any number and any form of those 20, it means there's an infinite level of recombination and number of building blocks you can use, which means you can build an infinite number of machines. So you've got this huge number of possibilities of proteins that can be built just from using multiple copies of the same 20 amino acids. That's why you need to get proteins in your diet, to break those down, to get the amino acids, to absorb them, get them into your blood, get them delivered to your cells, so your cells can use those amino acids to build all the proteins it needs. So now on to the really important question. How are those proteins made? How are those amino acids built together in those complex ways when this is just inside a cell, and a cell doesn't have a brain? It has the nucleus, but remember the nucleus just contains the DNA. It's not actually capable of thought. Now this is a reasonably complex process, but I've broken it down really simply. We're going to use a little bit of an analogy, so hopefully you won't have any problem understanding this. Now, if we think about protein synthesis from the point of view of having to sort out a big mixture of these emoji characters, okay? If I said you've got a load of emojis there, I want them arranged in a very specific way in a very specific line. Can you do that, please? Well, what we'd need is someone who can come along and do that. So we'll get this guy. He looks intelligent. He's got a clipboard. He's got a hard hat. I trust him. So if we said to him, look, I need those sorted out. Can you help me? He still wouldn't know what to do unless he had some instructions. but that's okay because he's got some instructions. He's got these. And if you look on this piece of paper above me, it's got all the pictures of lots of different emojis on there, and they're all organized in lines. So as long as this guy has got that piece of paper, that tells him how to order all of those emojis over there. So he looks at this piece of paper, he looks at the first one up there, I'll mark it in a circle. He looks at that one, he goes, right, I need that unhappy face. He goes over to the pile, he looks around, he finds the one he wants, takes it out, puts it over there. Moves down to the next one, you'll see it's the one with sunglasses. He finds it in the pile, he attaches it to the first one. So he's already starting to make a chain. Next one above me you can see is the guy with the moustache, so he can put that one on. Next one is the smiley face, and so on. And he works his way down that first line. If you look at it now, the emoji with the little devil horns is the one that's on the bottom of that first line there. So he's got to the bottom of his first line, but he doesn't stop, carries on reading, goes and starts the next line. Moves on down through there, gets to the bottom of that line, starts up to the next one, moves on down through that one, until you can see the final one that's up there is another one of the little guys with the moustache. Pretty easy, straightforward. That's not a difficult thing to get your head around. There's a bloke who's been told to put a load of emojis in order. He's got a sheet for how to do it. He just does it. Not difficult at all. Now, hopefully some of you are linking that back to what we just talked about with the cells, and you've already come to some realizations. This little guy, he's acting as a ribosome. He's doing the building. The piece of paper is the DNA. That's what's given him the instructions. And DNA is literally a list of the amino acids. It's listing the order to put them in. So the line of emojis that we've got up there contains all the amino acids and is the chain of amino acids, or what we call a polypeptide. Polypeptide, because poly means many, think polymers, okay? Poly means many. Peptide is the name for the bond that forms between the amino acids. So if that's an amino acid, that's an amino acid, the bond between them is a peptide. So that word polypeptide literally means many bonds, because there's lots of amino acids bonded together. So you've made that chain. However, a straight chain of amino acids can't do very much. To have a function, it must first have a shape. We'll explain more about that in a minute. And it does that by folding. So we'll have a look at that next. So the importance of folding. Let's just get the main bits back on the screen, just so we've got them to refer to all on the same diagram. I've got my ribosome, he's reading his DNA, he's put together the amino acids in the correct sequence according to the DNA, so he's made his polypeptide. Now, to make this a bit simpler, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shrink that same strand down. So you'll see it's over there now. It's exactly the same sequence, you can check it. All I've done is shrink it down much smaller. But what I need you to understand is there aren't really any polypeptides that are this short. There's only, I think, 15 emojis there, okay? Most polypeptide chains of amino acids, are hundreds of amino acids long. So really, we can put that on there and say it's those, etc., etc., etc. It would just go on and on and on. So to make things easier for us for the understanding, instead of me drawing out hundreds of emojis in a line, I'm going to replace that with just one long blue line. Now that one long blue line that I've just put on there, that is representing one very long polypeptide, one very long string of amino acids. Imagine if you could zoom in on that blue line and look at it. Within that blue line, you'd see all the emojis lined up. Okay, so that's what we're looking at with that blue line. But just a single line, that's not going to be able to do very much. What it needs to do is fold up in a very specific way due to the specific sequence of amino acids. Because what happens, certain amino acids really want to be next to certain other amino acids. So it might be that the sunglasses emoji there really wants to be next to the moustache one. So what will happen is the whole chain might fold up to try and put those two together. And then the one with devil horns might want to be next to the angel one. So they might fold themselves around to be together as well. So it forms all these folds and bends and twists to get the amino acids next to the ones they want to be, but never breaking that chain. Now the folding, therefore, that it does is going to be very, very specific and dependent to the sequence of those amino acids. So let's say it folds up in this way and we get this absolute jumbled tangle. But if we untangled all that and let it go, it would still fold back into that exact same shape, because the exact same amino acids will want to be next to the exact same other amino acids, and they're located in the exact same positions, making the exact same folds. So it will always fold up into that shape if it's that sequence of amino acids. Now, when we come to draw it, we don't draw proteins as that big scrambled scribble all over the place. It would be too difficult. We generally just draw the outline of them. So look at the shape of that one over there. I'm just going to overlay the shape that kind of goes around the outside of the shape and just shows its structure. Now you can see that it's folded up into that kind of blob shape with the mouth at the one side. That's just, for example, one example of proteins that might be that kind of shape. But the key thing, as with all things, it is shape that determines function. The shape of that protein, the shape that it folded into, determines what it does. Now, just to make that point really clear to you, I'm going to show you some obvious everyday examples of that. Okay, let's look at that. There's a mug, okay, simple drinking mug. It's really good at doing what it does. The shape of the handle is curved and fits a hand so you can hold it. It's hollow, so that things can go into it without leaking out. It's the correct kind of size and thickness that you can put it to your mouth and drink from it. Other things wouldn't function very well as a mug. Okay, let's throw up something else up here above my head. It's a spoon. Would a spoon make a good mug? No, it wouldn't, because it's not deep enough, it's not hollow enough, it hasn't got a holder on the side away from the heat of the hot drink that you've got inside it. But a spoon's very good at being a spoon because it's got a long bit that you can hold onto, and it's got a scoopy bit that can hold soup or scoop up ice cream, whatever you're doing with it. A spoon is good at being a spoon. A spoon ain't good at being a mug, and vice versa. If I put up here a pen is brilliant at being a pen. It's got a pointy end for making pointy thin lines. It's hollow so you can fill it with ink. It's got a little hooked bit so you can clip it over the top of a pocket. So, you know, everything about it, even the spring inside it for clicking the top down. The spring, its coiled shape, makes it great at compressing and expanding and being a spring. It's the shape that makes it good at its function. A baseball cap, if I put a hat up there, hats are really good at being hats, especially baseball caps. They're exactly the shape to go on the top of your head. They've got a sticky out bit at the front. That shape shields you from the sun's rays. You know, they're perfect at being a hat. They're rubbish as a spoon. If I put up an office chair, it's the shape that fits your body. The arms are the correct shape for resting your elbows on. I'm sat on a chair very much like that one. The wheels on the bottom of it, they're round. They've got axles running through them. That shape allows them to move and allows the chair to move around. If you put spoons on the bottom of a chair, those aren't the right shape for allowing it to move. And lastly, something lots of you are probably familiar with, a games console controller. It fits in your hands. The buttons are the correct size to move. The little joysticks are on spheres at the bottom, so the spheres can rotate around within the controller. The pads are slightly hollowed, so you can dip your thumb into them. It's their shape that makes their function possible. Same with proteins. That's why the folding is so important, because that's what creates their shape, which allows them to have their function. So let's summarize that. Now, this isn't a very snazzy slide because there's actually quite a lot of information, so I can't fill it with pictures as well. But let's get the key points on here, okay? Cells can make any proteins they need for any function that needs performing. It's simply a matter of putting the right amino acids together in the right order. And that's what's so important. It's getting the amino acids in the right order. Now, the instructions for the sequence of the amino acids is coded in the DNA in genes. Now, some people struggle with this because now we've got chromosomes, DNA, and genes, and they basically all mean kind of the same thing. Okay, so chromosome is the structure, DNA is the chemical, is the code, but a gene is just a section of the DNA that codes for one polypeptide. Okay, so if you're a ribosome, you read one gene's worth of the DNA because that tells you what polypeptide to make. Okay, so ribosomes do the actual building. The polypeptide, which is the chain of amino acids, then folds in this really specific way depending on the sequence of amino acids it contains. And if you change that sequence of amino acids, it folds into a different shape, which will have a different function. That's one of the key things about biology and about understanding DNA. If there's a tiny change in the DNA code, it can make a change in the polypeptide, in the amino acid sequence, which will change how it folds to make a different shape to have a different function. That's the very essence of evolution and how new characteristics and adaptations come about. Tiny changes in DNA that make tiny changes in proteins, which can create new functions. Okay. A different sequence of amino acids would fold differently and so form a different shape, and the shape of the protein determines its function. That last line is so important. Okay. Last one though, some proteins form structures, others perform chemical reactions. I said that at the start. There's these two main groups, but all of them are essential for the cell's life. Now, if you can really understand all of the points that I've put here, there's not much of biology you won't be able to have a really good handle on. And please, every time you come to a new section, be it when you're watching my videos or in your own class or whatever you're doing, wherever you are learning about your biology, please always just think, how does this relate to proteins? How can I apply my knowledge there? Because it's everywhere. If you're studying immunology, you're looking at disease, you're looking at the immune system. Lots of that is based around antigens and antibodies. Those are both types of proteins and how they function. Phagocytes, the white blood cells that digest pathogens and body cells. Those digest them using enzymes, which are another type of protein. If you're looking at evolution, it's about mutations in the DNA. Just change in DNA, change the gene, you change the polypeptide, you'll change the protein, get a new characteristic. If you're looking at genetics, you're looking at how the DNA passes from generation to generation to make sure each new generation can make the functional proteins. Genetic engineering is tinkering with the DNA to create new proteins. There isn't a single area of your course that doesn't ultimately come back to you understanding proteins. So this is so, so important to get right. Now, if I were teaching this in class, I'd probably spend 2, if not 3 lessons on the content that we've gone through in this video. I do reinforcement activities and examples because it's such an important thing. So if there's anything that was in this video that you're not sure about, please go back and watch it again. It's too important to just go, oh, I wasn't sure about that, I'll move on. Make sure, this is the one time I'm going to say this on the entire course, make sure you are happy with this video and what it contains before you move on to anything else. But if you are happy with it, this is where I want you to go next, to Proteins 2, which is on enzymes. Enzymes are one specific type of protein, and please don't think enzymes cover all proteins. Enzymes are one type of protein, but there's many, many types of proteins. But they're a really good example. They come up a lot in biology, and that video looks at them, how they function and what they are. So head there next, please. Okay. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, please. Like this video if you found it useful. And remember, I've got a Facebook page now where I post a lot of stuff, not specific to GCSE, but just some cool biological facts. Thank you.